Welcome back, everybody. Joining us today is James Laurain. James actually got his start as an electrical engineer before journeying into sales and freelance copywriting. And he's now the head of growth at Aampe. James has vast experience in leveraging B2B content strategies and copywriting to engage and, more importantly, retain customers. James, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so very, very much for having me.
Awesome. Well, how we typically get these episodes started is learning a little bit more about you. And what I'm really curious is how on earth you went from engineering to the world of marketing, because that is so completely opposite of each other. So I'm very excited. So maybe we can start off by you giving me a little bit more of an introduction about yourself and telling me how you went from engineering to marketing.
Sure. Oh man, we could probably spend an hour on this specific topic and we won't, so don't worry. But I feel like society as a whole, we expect people to have their whole life figured out by like 17. So when you're 17, you go to college, or 18, depending, and you're supposed to have it all figured out. And I was going to look up the stat this morning because it popped into my head and I didn't, but it's like something like 24%, or maybe it's 40%. It's something in there below 50 of people actually do what they went to school for. So for me, I remember the day I was sitting on like my kitchen counter and I asked my mom, what should I do with my life? And she said, you're really good at math and science, be an engineer. And I'm like, okay, great. So that's what I did. So I did 10 years. Yeah. Made the decision easy. So I actually did 10 years of medical device engineering, and realized that I really didn't like that kind of work.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was really good experience. And it's one of those where, we can look back and we're like, we'd never get to where we were today, experience we had then. But it wasn't really for me. So my aha moment was actually when I went to visit a doctor. So we were doing a drill for neurosurgery. And what I realized is what we built was not what the doctor was actually asking for. So I kind of feel like it's office space. There was that disconnect between what the customer was saying and what the engineers were doing. And I was the person who was supposed to go between them. But that was my big moment of like, when I actually sat with customers and talked with them and understood their needs and wants and what they really were asking for, like that was really exciting to me. And then I got deeper into understanding, buyer motivation and why do people make the decisions they make and that underlying psychology. And it kind of awoke something that I had within me the whole time that just didn't occur to me earlier. So that's kind of what led to that transition. And I do have an interesting note on that really quick. So nobody will hire an engineer to be a marketer, because, you have no experience and whatever.
Yeah.
So there's an awesome book by Seth Godin called What to Do When It's Your Turn and It's Always Your Turn. And so I don't know if you've heard of that one.
I haven't.
It's really good. And it's like nobody will pick you. You have to pick yourself. You have to find your own way. So I ventured from there. I went to technical sales because sales was one step towards marketing, I thought. So I was doing semiconductor and electronic sales. And then I actually just opened my own copywriting company and one day just called myself a copywriter. And then that took off and it did really well. And I learned a ton. And then I got picked up by Aampe because they were one of my clients, actually. So it's kind of one of those, if you want to pick your path, like you kind of have to make your path.
Absolutely. I really love that. Also, all respect and kudos to you for not being scared about taking that path or taking that jump, because I feel like the hardest part about switching roles so drastically is that you just don't know how to go about it. So the fact that you had the ability to just start this copywriting business and call yourself a copywriter, that's really awesome. But I'm curious to know, do you find that there's any parallels between engineering and marketing, or do you think they're completely different?
It's a good question. First, I have to say, I never said I wasn't scared.
Yeah,
I think that's important though.
Yeah, because
yeah. Well, people think that I have to not be scared, to make a leap like that. And it's like, no, you have to be terrified. But that usually means you're on the right path, right? There's a good terrified and there's a bad.
Good point.
Parallels between the two. This might sound offensive, but I can say it because I was both. I have never met, I shouldn't say that, but there's two of the main professions where they are so confident in what they know is engineering and marketing. So they think they know like everything. And it's really funny because it's only in the past year I've started working with data scientists more than marketers. My whole team is data scientists and me. That I've really learned like data scientists are more confident in what they don't know. Marketers and engineers are more confident in what they do know. But if you can grasp that shift, it's really cool. And it's really interesting. You learn more when you're more confident in what you don't know.
Yeah. And I don't even know how I would even come to that thought myself, but I think it's you working with all these different types of personalities and roles and things like that, that brought that upon you, which I guess that shifts us towards how you just mentioned that you work with a bunch of data scientists and yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so with your role at Aampe as head of growth, what are some of the key elements of those roles? Maybe tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah. So we are a small, nimble team, growing, which is awesome, but at this point still small, and lean, which I like. So me together with the CEO, so we have 3 co-founders. One of our co-founders is the CEO. Him and I kind of lead all of the marketing and sales efforts, but then customer success is also rolled into that. So since, again, we don't have leagues of people, you kind of have to run the whole thing, which is cool though, because you get to see every element. So it's like marketing can't blame sales and sales can't blame marketing and customer success just can't be angry. Like everyone has to kind of work together because it's all us, right? The same. To your point, the other part of my job, which I find fun and challenging, is I am the sounding board for the data scientists. So why they haven't like come out and said it, but I think one of the reasons they brought me on is because I'm a normal human who speaks normal human words and not like a data scientist who speaks data scientist words. So what I love and one of my favorite things to do is the data scientist will be like, does this make any sense to you? Like it makes sense to me, but does it make sense to you? And so it's like looking at their analyses and all that and trying to figure out, okay, how does this actually how would we explain this so that like a layperson or somebody who isn't a data scientist would understand it? Because data is like, it's this beautiful, there's so much nuance to it. And it is this beautiful thing in its complexity. But as marketers, we have been fed such simplistic things, like very simplistic stats. Every graph goes up and to the right. We can say things like, 9 a.m. Tuesday is the best time to send a message, period, as if like that's something you can even say. So understanding with the data scientist, how do I translate real data into something that actual humans can understand has been fascinating.
Okay, very interesting. And I guess just to take a step back to give us, myself and our listeners, a little bit more context as we dive into this topic, because I'm very interested to know about the whole role between AI and customer retention from your point of view and your work. But just to kind of set the stage a little bit more, Aampe itself as a business, how does Aampe help customers or your clients boost customer engagement?
I love this. I should, because this is my job, right? But
I hope you love it.
I know. It's taken me a year to get it, but I think I've landed on like the perfect illustration, which is MapQuest. Are you familiar with MapQuest? Are you old enough to remember the MapQuest?
My family used to use MapQuest all the time.
Okay. All right. So like MapQuest, when it came out, was awesome because before MapQuest, you had a map, right? And a map is like, I don't even know where to get started, right? But then we came up with MapQuest. So MapQuest, you put your address in and it gives you these sequential steps and you follow the steps, you arrive at your destination. And it worked beautifully until you missed your turn, until there was a
you've gone too far and you're in the lake and you're in the depths of the water.
Exactly. Is that like The Office? The Office, he did that with GPS. But
it's actually incredible that you caught on to that. That was exactly what I was thinking of. Turn right, you turned into the lake.
I don't know. This is so classic. It has faith I can do it. As MapQuest, like it I remember like you'd have this panic moment of like, how do I get back to the road? You'd follow this detour. And then when you get back on the road, you're like, it said I had to go 79 miles. How many do I have to go now? Like, so it's rigid. It works as long as everything goes perfectly. And more often than not, it doesn't work, right? You have problems or issues. So that is how like traditional CRM lifecycle marketing happens today. We build segments, we build user journeys. Day 1, you get this note. Day 2, you get this note. Day 3, you get this note, right? So it's MapQuest. That's what we have right now. But your user they're all different. They're all special in their own unique ways. They're all on their own journey, right? Okay. So to keep with our analogy, we had MapQuest. Then Google Maps came out. And like Google Maps like changed the game. Nobody uses MapQuest. Apparently they still exist. I think I saw a post from them a while ago and was like blown away. But either way.
Good for them.
Okay. I know, good for them. They're fighting the good fight.
Right.
So, but like what's the difference between MapQuest and Google Maps? So Google Maps has something MapQuest doesn't, which is that real-time feedback and data. And it doesn't just have data on you. They have data on all the other cars around you and what they're doing. So what I think people don't think about is like when you first flip the switch to turn on Google Maps, it had nothing. Like it sucked. There was nothing. It's essentially a map, maybe even less. But within like a few minutes, they know the speed of traffic on every major road because they're tracking all the cars, right? So they know within a few hours, I had an idea of what road closures there might be, like because people aren't using certain paths. And then within a few days, it starts to understand like the shortcuts or, the most optimal routes to get you from A to B because it's watching every car traverse. So again, traditional life cycle is like MapQuest. We set up those rigid journeys. What AMP does is apply data science layers on top of all of your user activity. So like the cars, like each individual car, we're watching each individual user. And then when a new user joins, we can figure out if they're on a similar path as one of the other cars, and then apply that same logic. So we have a destination we want the user to go. That's a purchase, a subscription, a certain activity within the app. We can apply all of our learnings from all the other cars to figure out, how do I get this car? How do I get this user on the most ideal, optimal path they'll resonate with to complete that action?
Okay, interesting. I also absolutely love that analogy. I don't think I've heard something so interesting, because that just tapped into some childhood memories there. And actually, speaking of which, of how you said that it has to follow the right exact perfect steps. I'll never forget this one time. My mom and I were going somewhere when I was younger, and she always used to print out the MapQuest directions. So we'd always print it out and take it with us in the car, staple it, bring it in the car, whatever. And our printer ran out of ink. So we had no idea where we were going because we just didn't have the instructions.
Did you bring like the blank pages? Did she like bring the extra pages? No.
And it was so late, and I couldn't even read it. I was like, I don't know where to go. And it said, if you've reached blank, you've gone too far. And it's like, where did we reach? I don't know. So I very much like that analogy, because I think the fact of the matter is it's hard to think about that kind of analogy when you're not really sure or how to understand putting real-time feedback into these kind of apps. Because even think about something like Waze, it's pretty smart that they're using customer data and customer reporting to understand, is there a cop nearby? Is there a speed camera? Is there a roadblock? Whatever. But I really like that analogy that you put in terms of almost like a static versus real-time use of the life cycle of talking to a customer. And speaking on this whole idea of using AI and customer engagement, if we shift our focus a little bit more towards the customer retention, because that's obviously the topic that we are here today to talk about, in your opinion, how do you think that AI has changed the customer retention landscape?
So I want to take a step back and talk about mobile retention, because I think the state of retention in mobile is specifically and especially bleak compared to how we think of retention. So this is to me, this is fascinating. So 1 in 4 people only open an app one time. So think about all the apps on your phone, right? It's just clutter at some point, or you pick one up because like you want a specific purpose. Like, that's Uber for me. If I go somewhere, I download Uber, but Uber doesn't even, I live in the middle of nowhere. So Uber doesn't even operate by me. So I just uninstall it the minute I get home. But 1 in 4 people only open it one time. So you lose 25% of your user base like instantly. 77% are gone within 3 days, most of those within day 1. And then at the end of a month, you're left with 2 to 5% of your original users. Yeah. So it's like, if you really want a model for like a bad model for retention, apps are the way to go. So here's what blows me away though. There's 9 million apps in the App Store around there. Someone downloaded yours. So if you look at like the customer acquisition side, somebody downloaded yours out of 9 million. Like, you won the lotto. You have a 1 in 9 million chance of getting downloaded, roughly, right? So, but then to lose all but 2% in like 30 days is insane. It's like a total leaky bucket. So we did a deep dive because, again, I work with all data scientists. So we looked at 30 million users. And what we found is, even of the active ones, like when you have, I'm going to say active, when you have those users before they've churned, we can divide them into several buckets. So at any given time, you have about 2.5% who are new. So they're within 7 days new. Your active users are about 5% of those users that you have, before they've churned. Recent, we call it. So if it's somebody who did something within the past 8 to 14 days, they've done a meaningful event, is about 2.5%. Your biggest bulk of users are your lurking users. So that's somebody who has been on the app but didn't do anything meaningful. So if I'm in e-commerce, they looked, but they didn't buy within the past 14 days. That's like 35%-ish. And then your inactive, or the people who haven't done anything in 14 days, that's like around 60%, but haven't churned. So it's funny, just to put attention on like how important retention is and what retention means. So retention doesn't just mean keeping active. That's 5%. If I can move lurking and inactive, make up 90% of your user base. So if I can like move 0.1% of them to do something, like that's better than getting every one of my active users to do something. So like that's how important and impactful retention is. So we talked about kind of the old model of marketing. This is, you couldn't do what you can do now with AI before. So in the old model, you would segment your users, and if it came to like an e-commerce app, so when you abandon cart, which we've all done, they send you a message like 30 minutes after.
Right.
And then the next day, and then 3 days later, you forgot something. What AI lets us do is help us understand user patterns and behaviors and why they've done this. So a quick example is like, sometimes I'll add something to the cart, but I want to check with my wife before I buy. I'm thinking about getting this, but I need to talk to her, and I can talk to her tonight, but I'm not going to talk to her right now. So that message in 20 minutes is an annoyance, But to somebody who's flighty and just forgot, somebody texted me and I went and checked that message in 20 minutes, it's useful. So how do you know which is which? So this is how I think AI is going to change retention, is because it will allow you to see the patterns and understand down to the individual user and behavior and start to react that way. So instead of that kind of, they're a best fit, which means they really don't fit for anybody. They're just kind of the best we can do at the time with rigid rules. We're going to see the rigid rules start to disappear and be replaced with something that's more adaptive, that kind of learns each user and speaks to each individual user.
And I guess too, on that point, you make this great conversation or this great topic about the idea that each of these users is obviously different, because I think in this day and age, there's so many companies competing for attention that you need to find a way to be not even personalized, but almost hyper personalized, because everybody's going after personalization given the fact of the rise of AI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I guess one question I would probably have if I was sitting, let's say like in our listener seat, who they're probably working at a e-commerce company, maybe they're running their own, maybe their business or the company that they work with is on Shopify. I'm probably thinking to myself, how on earth do I go about doing this? Because that seems like it makes a lot of sense in terms of what you're saying, that customer A needs to ask his wife later on, but customer B just forgot momentarily. So how do we target them both? So I guess my question to put this all together is, what are some questions that people should be thinking about when leveraging this kind of AI in these retention efforts, so that they don't piss off customer A who needs to talk to his wife, and they target customer B who just forgot and needs to be reminded just quickly, so that they get back to that cart and they finish that purchase?
Yep. This is actually this has been one of the biggest challenges for me for marketing this company, is I don't have a good alternative. And here's what I mean. Normally, like when I like the ebook. So if we're talking about content writing and things like that, I like the approach of give someone something they can do actionable right now. That's very helpful. And then you show them that your product can like swoop in and solve all their problems. So like you could do it yourself manually, but you could just pick up our product. There really isn't a good way to do this with a lot of the tools and things that are out there. So the right answer would be, I have found, and this is anecdotal because I don't have solid data behind it, but people tend to operate the same kind of way. So users who tend to want to check with their spouse will want to check with their spouse. Users who are flighty will want to be flighty. So the answer is, you test a user with a message after 20 minutes. Did they buy or did they not buy? And there's also a data sparsity problem, which is most people don't buy, period, right? So you have to deal with that. But anyway, if they do buy at the 20 minute, maybe the 20 minutes a good reminder. If they don't buy until the 1 day, well, then maybe the 1 day is better for that user. And again, it tends to be habitual by user. But the problem is, like, how do you listen for that and how do you act? So the thing that makes apps special is they are instrumented as far as they have an event stream or click stream. So anything you do in an app, surprise, you're being recorded. If you swipe, if you click, if you tap, all of that has the event and then a timestamp to it and maybe some metadata around it. But we can listen to that at the individual user level that you could not do with a normal sized marketing team. And then discover and uncover those patterns for that particular user, and also draw associations in between users. So if you wanted to do this today without an AI system, you would literally have to set up and try, send a user, does the user respond after 20 minutes or not? And then, next time that user comes available for a message, do the one that worked best for them and hope it still works. So really it's A/B testing,
right?
But it's A/B, but at any given time, like a team can run like a small handful of A/B tests. And even like the super apps we work with that have millions of users and giant teams, you can only run so many tests at once before they start to interfere and overlap and your data isn't, your data stops being valuable. We, at any given time with the user using our apps, we're running tens of thousands of A/B tests at a time and applying the results. And that's something you can only really do with AI. That's what AI is not for writing blog posts. It's for like this type of stuff, right? And so this is where it's most powerful. Yeah.
Very interesting. And so I guess you touched on it slightly, but I want to dig in a little bit more. So we talked about some of the actionable ways that someone can think about how do I implement this myself, or how can I leverage AI so that it helps me listen to what the customer is looking for? How have you experienced, or how have you seen some common challenges that companies face when trying to implement AI in customer retention? So maybe not Aampe, obviously, but companies that maybe you work with, or maybe companies that you've seen in the past. I'm sure there are some challenges that come with the growth and change of this kind of landscape. So curious thoughts about that.
Yeah, the first one, I think there's two main things. And the first one is not the company's fault. The first one's the tool's fault. Most tools right now are rushing to be AI enabled, which means they're just adding AI features, but it's not like a true part of the product. So like my go-to example is like I use an email, like an ESP, email service provider, like everybody does. They're all the same. So there's no point in even calling one out. They have a writing assistant. We'll write your email for you, and you click that button and it's garbage. Or I just used today, I use Veed, and I love Veed, so I'm not smacking Veed. Veed is wonderful for video editing. And they have we'll generate a blog post for you. And you're like, great. It's not great. I mean, it's a start, but it's not great. So you have to see past all these companies that are just adding AI in a way that's not really meaningful, and a company that was built with AI at the center. So we were built mid 2020 and AI native. So I mean, AI is critical to what we do, but it's funny, we actually avoided the buzzword for years just because it's not what people typically think of as AI now. Now everyone thinks of AI as like a writing assistant in an LLM, which is a very, very small piece of AI. So, but anyway, the first problem is the tool, because you can't implement AI effectively if your tools haven't implemented AI effectively. Now you're just writing cold emails that are crappy, and that's not good. But the second one is more important. You have to treat like a true AI system functions differently from a non-AI native system, and you have to learn to adapt and work with it. So you can't just dictate everything to an AI model. And you when you get data out, it's more of, this has been interesting for me, the non-data scientist. It's instead of like, if I tested two things and one worked better than the other, sometimes you don't ask any questions. You just, one worked better than the other, and I take the one, I implement it. Okay. With an AI system, you have to kind of ask the question of like, why is it doing that? Why is it acting that? You almost have to treat it more like a coworker sometimes than a tool. It's not an Excel sheet. Yeah, I mean, it is. And some days, you're like, why is this happening? And you have to like root cause it. But people are afraid to let go and like let an AI run its course. And even things that are really, really low risk, it's just the fear of letting go of something. And the second piece of that is we have to find the more useful thing we can be doing once we do let go. So I think the biggest problem with implementation is we feel like business has to keep being business as usual, and we still have to do our rigid functions that we've always done the same way we always have. But with the AI implementation, you have to just learn to work with it, let it make you better, and then find ways to improve it. Like it's interesting. It's like I said, it's acting with a coworker instead of an Excel sheet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you put that perfectly, because I think the thing is, a lot of people, I think this is actually a very timely topic to talk about how this all plays a role, especially in something like customer retention, or when you're trying to continuously surprise, delight, and upsell your customers. But I think it's the way that you put it is really important, because it's figuring out how do you work alongside this new technology or this new tool or this new thing as a coworker, for example, versus thinking, oh, it's going to replace everything I do, and not finding that value add when you use AI to help work on some of those other tasks. So I really like the way you put it there, because I think it makes it very clear for someone to think about, how do I use something like AI for its best intentions, for learning customer insights, for doing these things at scale, for understanding how can we change the way that we operate with our customers using something like AI, and not just help me write this blog post that's going to turn out just robotic sounding things 24/7. So I really like the way that you put that all together. And I guess actually, funny enough, turning this on its head and going to the other topic that you're very knowledgeable and have a lot of expertise on, around content and copywriting, which combats having the AI write everything for you. I'm curious to know your thoughts and your strategies around how you can use content and compelling copywriting to improve something like customer retention. So dive into that whole topic right there.
Oh, no, this is good. I think AI empowers the type of AI I'm talking about, which is not writing everything for you, but we call it intelligent distribution. I'm getting the right message to the right person at the right time. It empowers copywriters to be more creative. So the thing is, here's an easy example. So we'll take a subscription app I'm working with a couple running apps. So like, let's think of a running app. So I'm trying to get you to run every day, trying to get people to run every day. So if they haven't run, or maybe not every day, but if they haven't run, I'm going to send them a message that says, you haven't done your run today, right? So I have the copywriter write the one message, I program it in so that it sends, if you haven't run within a week, send a message, I haven't seen you out there, get out there and run. Okay. The problem is, if we're thinking of true retention, all the stats I mentioned earlier, people are turning it off. There's an effect where your brain will literally turn off similar messages. So if I keep sending you run today, pretty soon you just swipe it, you dismiss it, you forget about it, and you probably uninstall the app.
In there.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
But if I can tap into the reason why you want to run, like why did you want to run? Is it because swimsuit season is coming up? Is it because you're recovering from surgery? Is it because your doctor said you have heart issues and you need to run? Why is that? And if I can tap into it, then I can do some really creative copy things like T-3 weeks till beach time. Like, oh crap, you read that and you're like, I got to run, right? So I think typically when you write a message in traditional CRM, you write a handful of messages. You might write some every day, but like, for example, that reminder message is a message that gets sent to people. And maybe you have 2-3 different versions, but primarily one. Our typical customer writes anywhere between 2,000 and 100,000 different messages. So like we need copywriters. It sounds intimidating. We have ways of doing it that are not actually AI. We actually don't use AI to write. We can, but we typically don't.
Wow.
But because it's going to appeal to you differently. Like it's good. We need messages for every user, for every motivation, for every offer in the app so that our model, and a few different versions, so our model can find the right one to keep engaging them. Because if I send you T-3 weeks till beach time, well, again, you're going to tune that out pretty soon.
Yeah.
Very quickly too. So if I start sending you like, this would be silly, but if I start sending you like ads for bathing suits, you're like, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? Like you can get so creative in how you interact with people if that's their motivation. So I think it helps copywriters flourish and it helps content teams flourish because you can explore all these things that you previously couldn't because you had to find one that works for everybody. Now I can write all kinds of stuff and let the AI decide who it will resonate best with.
Interesting. As you're saying this, I'm realizing I'm definitely on the receiving end of that because I was actually just thinking about this the other day. I was looking at new blends for alternatives to coffee because I'm trying to switch out from drinking coffee to something more sustainable that doesn't give me all the horrible consequences of coffee that I face. Yeah. I don't like tea. So I was just kind of doing a quick search. I was just looking at it, whatever. And when I started noticing and I don't know if this is actually a correlation or not, but the ads I started seeing were not for specific products. Rather, I was seeing so many more of those. I'm not sure if you know these, but these get ready with me videos. And these get ready with me videos are basically different influencers or different people basically doing like their morning routine or their after work routine. And they were always featuring some sort of alternative to coffee. And I was like, to myself, I was like, are they showing me this ever? And I just don't know how this was coming together because also I love those videos. I love watching this little lady get ready in the morning and do her hair and do her makeup and have her coffee or whatever. But as you're saying this, I'm just thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I wonder if this is a possibility because again, it wasn't an ad for, let's say, a bathing suit, for example, or it wasn't an ad for a coffee alternative. Rather, it was different content that I was seeing related around the use case of this or an aesthetic way to present this kind of product because people buying this kind of product care about the aesthetic, etc. And so my mind is slowly being blown right now. This is
another interesting point because we have UA, user acquisition, and we have retention, right? So like, it's funny because that's the UA piece, right? Is I'm drawing you in with that. Now, once we're retained, so once you sign up for a brand, are they going to continue or are they going to fall flat? Because you should not fall flat because you know so much more about somebody than you did when you acquired them. Once they're your actual customer. Now I know order history. I know how often you've looked and what you've looked at and whatever. My content should be so good and so personalized, way better than the ad you see, right? But is it going to be? Probably likely not. So it's awesome that they're nailing it. But this is my point. You have so much more data. But I think companies as a whole, a lot of your guests have talked about, right? And retention gets neglected because there isn't as much sex appeal with retention. But you should be able to do so much better, so much cheaper. I think people are seeing it. The wheels are coming off with performance marketing and now the ads and ad tracking, all this stuff and invest going down, return on ads, starting to see it. I'm hoping, but yeah, we should see it more. By the way, Cryo Brew, CRIOBRU. It's cocoa coffee.
Wait, say that again. Cryo?
Cryo Brew, CRIO
Yeah.
BRU, I think. But it's cocoa shells. That's called. I hate all of it. I hate the mushroom coffee. I hate all. I'm not a huge tea person. That stuff is amazing because it tastes like hot chocolate, but it has a tiny little boost to it.
Excellent.
Yeah, okay. If you've gotten one thing out of this episode, that will be it.
I was going to say, you are my new friend because chocolate is my favorite thing in the entire world. And this alternative that I just bought is actually a mix of this mushroom powder and cocoa. So I'm more likely to try it because it has cocoa in it.
Yeah. The mushrooms make me headachy, but that stuff is insane. It's really good.
Yeah, look it up.
All right.
But just kind of coming back to that point you were making. So other than giving me this absolutely dumb idea, the whole idea of how retention is kind of overlooked, and obviously they will have more data about the user. For example, me, they will know so much more about me of how I'm using this product or why I'm going to continue to buy this product because there is a subscription option for a certain product that I decided to try. And I'm curious in your point of view, because honestly, I never even thought about content and copywriting being a part of this retention strategy, because typically what you're thinking about is, offering some sort of promo or offering some sort of discount or fun activity or something for them to get engaged with. But the idea of content and copywriting works so well because I love when brands have that messaging down right. It just makes me think that they understand me so much better. And they've taken the time to actually invest in that. So I wonder, do you have any, actionable tips or actionable strategies for how companies can think about embedding that really strong content and copywriting into the retention side of things, not just the acquisition? Might be a big ask.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, so this again has been my challenge. It's like, how do you do it effectively? Because you can write like it's about. So we worked. The example I go to is eyeglasses. So right now, if you buy glasses, it doesn't matter what. All the glasses companies, all they send you is ads for frames.
Yeah.
But like whether you're a new customer, buy frames, buy one, get one, two, whatever, or if you've just bought them yesterday, they send you ads for frames. Like it's just frames all the time. But really, like once you buy a pair of glasses, you should be getting something about like care and maintenance, or like the minute you get it, it should be about adjusting them, right? Like how do you get them to fit right and all that stuff? Or like what initial questions do you have and how can I answer those? And then like if you want to sell, then sell lens wipes and then sell the repair kits, right? Or accessories that go with the frames you just bought. And then if they didn't buy sunglasses, then you can buy, sunglasses to go with your glasses. But instead of like pumping frames, like I just bought frames. The average user buys frames once a year. So like stop with all of that, So some elegance that you can do in the rigid journey is you can say, okay, I'm only going to push the frames for 1 year, but in the journey right after you buy, I'm going to give you all of this other helpful information. Misfits Markets, which is the people who ship you food in boxes, they do this really well. You order your box and before your box gets there, they give you advice on how to store your food. You're about to get it. Here's what to expect, and then they do every week you get like, here are the farms that we work with and the food they're growing. Nice. Cool. The problem is some people buy glasses once a month. Like they're nuts. There are people who I know people who have a drawer full of different glasses because they like the frames.
I guess the style of the fashion aspect.
Yeah. Most of the people I know are like doctors because I'm not going to buy a pair of glasses frames every month. But either way, if you did set up this journey, this is the challenge where I'm only pumping frames once a year. And in the interim, I'm pushing cleaning wipes. You will totally miss the whole group that buy glasses once a month. And the interesting thing is we found it's typically like 99% of an app's revenue comes from like 5% of their users, the power users. So by making the path that works for the general, glasses once a year, maybe I push twice a year, you miss all your power users who buy once a month. Or worse is they buy and then they buy the next month and they sign up for the same user journey you created. Now they're getting multiple messages for it, which happens all the time.
Yeah.
So that's where the thing you can do today is, try to think about that user journey and build a user journey. But everyone's already trying to do that. This is where the AI makes a big difference in actually personalizing it, trying to find those power users and feed them so they continue to keep. And at the same point, see the people who haven't bought in forever. You haven't bought glasses in 2 years. How do I approach you differently?
Yeah. And I think also just how you talk about the user journey, I think it's so, so important. But almost asking yourself, at least what I learned from our conversation today, is asking yourself, what am I listening for? What's that specific thing that I want to be learning about this kind of customer so I can understand customer A who needs to talk to his wife and customer B who just forgot and needs a little nudge. And so I think even just adding that actionable, almost that action task or something like that in the user journey makes it easier to understand how to go about these things, because it can be abstract. There can be a lot to figure out. It can be hard to know where to start. So I like that thinking around what you're almost listening for that customer, so that you can understand what are all these different groups looking for, which it's quite interesting.
Really quick though, the data scientist will tell me, just remember, this goes back to the very first thing we talked about. Marketers are overly confident. So remember, that is an assumption. Everything you think is an assumption, like everything. So if you think, the next logical thing is I send you the repair kit and the wipes, that works for some people. That does not work for other people. That's where AI allows you to level up beyond the user journey, because each user is on their own journey. I have data science visualization. It looks more like a cobweb than a straight line. So being sensitive to all that too, and remembering that the best journey you build is awful for the majority of your users.
Yeah. And I think honestly, I was just thinking about, there is a subscription. So it's not Dollar Shave Club. I know that's the famous one that everyone talks about. There's one that's called, I think it's called Flamingo, if I'm not mistaken, more geared towards women and shaving products. And I remember the first time around when I was looking at it or just interested in the product itself, they said that they were going to send you a refill every month or something like that. And I was thinking, oh, that's great. Like, you want the fresh blade, you want it to be nice and sharp, all that fun stuff. But they mentioned that they were also going to send a new handle every single time. And to me, in my head, I was thinking that's such a waste, because I know they're just going to pile up. I'm not going to throw out the whole razor just to start a new. I'd rather just detach the head and put the new one on. Yeah. And I noticed like pretty soon after they changed that right away, because I think they realized that it was an assumption that they made that people want a new fresh thing every month, but it was just missing the piece, that it was just the headpiece, not the whole body of it. But actually, they had to make that assumption to figure out what on earth to do next, because you have to run some sort of experiment to get to the next best thing. So I couldn't agree more with you there. And I think assumptions are made to be broken and to be figured out, so you can find that insight or that intelligence.
Well, because there's a lot of those. Dollar Shave Club, Harry's Shave. The assumption, why once a month? Yeah. So here's another one though. But to my point is, someone like me who I shave if I am forced to. So I bought a safety razor. I have the replaceable, whatever. I haven't bought new razors and I don't even know when. Right. But so I'm a bad customer. But either way, some people, their cadence is a lot longer. Some people, their cadence is faster. So it's like, the minute we realize absolutely everything is an assumption, we realize there are some users that could be twice a month. And they would probably pay more for twice a month, because once a month is too long. There are other people who only want it every 2 months. So by shipping them every month, they're building a pile of razors that, what am I going to do with these? Yeah. So it's like everything is an assumption. That's where AI helps to bring those patterns for the individual, which is really like the next level, right? Yeah.
No, very interesting. And I think throughout this entire episode, the key insight here is actually comes down to that assumption, because the fact is, when you're thinking about AI and customer retention, when you're thinking about compelling copywriting and content, these things are always a test. And also, it's a nice reminder that you have to continuously iterate on that and be able to understand, but you can use something like AI to help you along that. So I really appreciate all of the insights that you shared and brought to the table, because I think it's really interesting to look at it from a data perspective. And I think it's really important, because there's so much talk about data out there, but actually knowing how to go about using it is the really important thing. So I'm sure our listeners will be very, very intrigued by understanding how to go about it and all those actionable insights that you shared. So thank you very much for that. And before I let you go, we have a quick little lightning round that we like to do. So we always end off on 3 very quick questions and a piece of advice, and then we'll be on our way. So when I ask you the question, just think of what comes to mind first, and then we'll take it from there. All right. Okay. So first question in the lightning round is, curious on your thoughts on this one. Do you honestly think the customer is always right?
I think the customer is what the customer is. And I think right or wrong are labels and perceptions that we put on top of our customers' actions to overly simplify it. So it's kind of like what we talked about here. I think right and wrong is an attempt to mask the true complexity of our actual customers. So I don't think customers are right or wrong. They just are.
Interesting. I knew it was going to be something interesting like that.
Does that make sense?
It does. And it's abstract at the same time. So it's making me think. So
all right, good. All right.
It doesn't, but in a good way. It's an assumption at the end of the day. All right. Second question. What 3 attributes does everyone in marketing need to have?
Well, I think the first one is, I think has been another theme of this podcast, which would be humility, right? So understanding that even the things we know, we don't really know, and that's okay. But the hard part is getting the rest of management to believe that's okay. Humility is important. I think good listening skills, right? Understanding customers and actually talking to a actual squishy live human customer is important. And then I would say, obviously, creativity and some level of foresight, probably.
I love that. Sounds like a perfect blend, because I think you can be more creative when you have that humility that it's okay if things don't work out that first time. So definitely appreciate that one. All right. Last but not least, in the lightning round, which clothing brand would you love to help market and why?
Clothing brand. I'm not. So this is funny. My wife buys my clothes. If I had my way, I would never buy clothes again. It's depressing for me. I just don't like clothes. Do you know Duluth? Do you know Duluth Trading Company?
I do.
I don't know if they're regional or not. They have these they have hilarious products. I love it. The engineer in me loves them. They have ingenious products. They have like armpit vents so you don't sweat. And they have they came up with all this creative stuff. So they have I don't know what's special about them, but they have underwear that's called Buck Naked, but it's Buck like the deer. It's like a very woodsy theme. But then all their ads are like, pick up your essentials for every season. Like they're the most absolutely they drop the ball. Like the products are so interesting, but the ads are everyone, I think their tagline's highly capable clothing, but they miss the mark. So I would love to bring the creativity that already exists in the product and apply it to the ads. And it already seems like a super fun brand. So I think that would probably get my vote.
All right. Very interesting. Well, if I see you working with Duluth one day, I guess we'll find out.
If you're listening, Duluth, hit me up.
Yeah. They're like, ooh, James, we have an idea.
There we go.
All right. And last but not least, we just always like to end on a piece of advice because I think it's a nice way to tie the whole episode together. So is there a piece of marketing or life advice that someone shared with you once that has always stayed with you?
I think this goes back to the almost very beginning of how I got my start in marketing. That book, if you can pick it up. It's called What to Do When It's Your Turn and It's Always Your Turn by Seth Godin. Seth has also written something along the lines of pick yourself, choose yourself. Nobody is going to choose you. Choose yourself. So if you want to make a change, if there's something big, audacious you want to go do it. Because don't wait for the world to make the opportunity for you. Go do it. But there's a flip side, which is take a chance on somebody. Because if you think back to your life and where you are, my guess is there's at least one person who took a chance on you when you probably didn't deserve it. That's our responsibility now, is to be that chance for somebody else. So if you're in the seat, go to do it. Go do the thing. Pick yourself. Go create. Go do that thing you've been dying to do. Just do it. Don't make the excuses. But on the flip side, if you're in the opportunity to help somebody else and take a chance on somebody, absolutely do it, because you could absolutely change their life. And it's something that usually doesn't take that much investment from us. So
awesome. I love that. And actually just ties the whole thing together really nicely.
Oh,
so thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for joining us on the episode today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.